President Biden and former President Trump have both officially won enough delegates to be the presumptive 2024 presidential nominees. So basically, my friends, it's going to be a rematch of 2020. And we all know how crazy that got, especially in terms of disinformation. Well, my next guest believes this year's election could be even more challenging. His new book, The Lie Detectives, explores what the smartest people in politics are thinking about in how to run campaigns in this media environment. Please welcome to New Day, Sasha Issenberg. I'm so glad you're here talking about this because we've been hearing a lot about disinformation in politics. Is this why you wrote this book, especially now when we're seeing, AI just grow out of control and disinformation just assaulting us at every level?
Yeah, I mean, it's totally changed the sort of playbook for people who are running campaigns. It used to be that your opposition was your opponent. It was another candidate, it was another party. They were playing basically by the same rules you were and under the same constraints. And if they lied about you, you could call them a liar and hope that voters would respond. Now your opposition could be someone in their basement who's anonymous, just trying to create mayhem. It could be a foreign intelligence service. It could be somebody trying to make money off of advertising clicks. And so what was interesting to me is a question of how and when do you decide to respond to that?
Right. And so what is the answer to that? I mean, if this is going to be a rematch of 2020 and we're going to see the same things bandied at each other, how do you respond?
So often the best answer is not to respond. You know, I think one of the errors that people make first, and I think people are overcome by the novelty of this, is we need to do something, right? And the fact is, if you're a public figure or a public institution, people are going to be lying about you and the issues you care about online every day. And often it can be counterproductive to respond. It can draw attention to it, the way the algorithms are structured. If you try to fact check something, it can actually amplify it. So, but there is some stuff you need to respond to because it's going to reach the people you care about. And so the difficult decision is getting the data to know when are the few times that you really need to respond and how you can do it without reinforcing the underlying lie.
So something you just said, and that actually sent chills up my spine about the algorithm and AI. I mean, how will the rise in artificial intelligence, which is largely control of that algorithm, make this a very different race?
So we've already seen examples of deepfake audio or video photos that have targeted both Joe Biden and feature Donald Trump. I think we should expect more and more of high quality fakes. That said, I would also caution people not to get so entranced by the new technology to lose sight of the fact that some of the biggest, most influential lies that have shaped our politics in the last 8 years have been very low tech. I think about QAnon, which is basically text on a bulletin board. I think about COVID disinformation around the vaccine. None of these had a sort of high or election denial in 2020 was basically one guy talking into a microphone on camera. So I think we should think more about why voters and citizens respond to certain lies than be solely obsessed with how they're being created.
Right, and also the fact that they're being created is a very scary thing, and it can be a great danger to some folks. Why are those who study disinformation right now especially worried about its spread in the Latino and Asian American communities?
Yeah, so the private messaging apps are the thing we don't talk enough about. We talk a lot about what's on Facebook. We talk a lot about what's on Twitter and X because they have some transparency. They're visible, but you think about apps like WhatsApp or Telegram or Signal that started as messaging apps, but they've become sort of broadcast platforms for groups. Sometimes you have tens, hundreds of thousands of people who are getting their news there, and it's especially true in non-English speaking communities, and they're very hard for campaigns or researchers to get eyes into, and thus, you could look on the front of the local newspaper and understand what voters were hearing somewhere. Now you can't do that.
Yeah, that's it. Don't get me started on that, but I do have a question. I think I know a lot of folks who are so sick of hearing it. They've just kind of tuned out to everything. Why is it important for those folks, especially everyday folks, that are not connected to a campaign, to care about this book?
Because it is very hard for society to function if we don't have a sort of shared truth, a shared set of facts. It's not just about whether your candidate is going to be harmed or benefit from a disinformation episode, but it's going to be very hard to govern, to have any consensus on issues if we can't agree on basic facts about how the world works or what is true or what isn't. And I think we're in an era where these conspiracy theories are starting to break down, the shared understanding that allows us to make decisions as a society.
Right, that consensus is fractured, certainly. How would you rate your level of concern about the impact of disinformation in state races and even more local races?
I think this is the big area. I mean, I came away from spending a year reporting on this less convinced that, one deep fake was going to torpedo a presidential campaign or something.
Yeah.
It's just so hard to move opinions that way. But when you get down to a county executive race or a city council race, that's where I think that, voters' opinions are less formed. They know less about the individuals. They might not be partisan races. And that's those candidates, the Biden campaign, the Trump campaign, they know how to get an executive at Facebook to take seriously their complaints.
Yeah.
Somebody running for local office has no idea what to happen if they're on the receiving end of this. And I think that if something bad happens this year where election outcomes are affected by spread of disinformation, it's more likely to be in a race that we're not paying attention to right now than one of the big statewide or federal races.
Oy. All right. So as a political science professor, I remember back in some years ago when I was in college, we would talk about the places that you could get news that was news you could trust. Nowadays, it seems so lacking. What is your opinion? Where can we go to find that?
I mean, I think there are still good local news organizations everywhere. We should read them. We should support them. The economics of that business is really tough now. I would advise people who are spending time online that if you see something that sounds too good to be true, especially if it flatters your biases or humiliates somebody that you don't like, a public figure, or seems to affirm something you like, take a second and just Google fact check and whatever the details of the thing are. Odds are, if it's a high profile thing, you'll be led to something from the Associated Press or Snopes that will give you the background. There's hardly anything online that you have to share or spread immediately. And, take a second to figure out if it's true. And also, if you find a fact check that tells you that something you thought might be true is wrong, share that. Often what happens is people share the stuff that is the lies without thinking about it, and then they see the truth and they move on. Use your network, the people who trust you, to spread the good information.
That is a great advice. And trust your local news organizations that are really there in it. Like King 5, we stand for truth. You can trust that we are doing our due diligence. So thank you so much for your time here. Thank you for writing this, helping us be a little more educated on this issue.
Thanks.